Before Xena Warrior Princess, before Buffy the Vampire Slayer, there was She-Ra, Princess of Power. Twin sister to He-Man, she was like the first real female action cartoon character back in the 1980s. To simply call her a female version of He-Man would be accurate, but too simplistic, as she managed to be a strong woman but kept her very feminine identity. The events of She-Ra took place on the planet of Etheria, the sister planet of Eternia, where as her real persona, Princess Adora, she was the leader of the rebellion going to war against the evil forces of the Horde, led by the tyrant Hordak, as the people of Etheria attempted to drive the Horde off their world. This is in stark contrast to Skeletor on Eternia, where he would plot to take over Eternia from his base at Snake Mountain, whereas Hordak and the Horde had a good portion of Etheria enslaved under his tyrannical rule. Now, I can't remember the exact first time I saw She-Ra, but I do remember seeing adverts on TV stating that she was He-Man's twin, and I do remember really becoming familiar with her, not with the TV show, but the book, The Secret of the Sword. Back in those days, famous franchises were known for doing a full adaptation of animated movies and TV shows into books, with Transformers the movie and Ghostbusters 2 such examples. Now, going through the book and looking at the pictures, it sent my young hyper-imagination into overdrive, and I was surprised to learn that She-Ra started out as evil and served as one of Hordak's force captains. As the story was told, Adora was kidnapped as a young baby by Hordak with Skeletor, his pupil, by his side. She was then brainwashed by Hordak's chief sorceress Shadow Weaver and made to serve the Horde. A chance meeting with He-Man, who has arrived on planet Etheria, soon breaks the hold that Hordak and the Horde have over Adora, and is then bestowed with the Sword of Protection. With her new powers, she saves He-Man, and together they join forces, and along with the Great Rebellion, defeat the Horde. There is a happy reunion as Adora meets her parents, King Randor and Queen Marlena, but the reunion is short-lived as Adora decides to stay on Etheria and help the rebellion put an end to the Horde's rule, and thus beginning her own solo adventures. Now, a little known fact about the Horde: they were created by Mattel as a new set of toys and were intended to be new enemies for He-Man. But once the He-Man series had finished production and She-Ra was introduced, the producers then decided to make the Horde She-Ra's villains. This show was practically identical to He-Man, and given that it was produced by the same company, Filmation, and that really isn't too much of a surprise. But if you were blindfolded and you heard sounds from the show, you would swear you were watching He-Man. I mean, the special effects, the sounds, the background music were ripped straight from He-Man, and they were put into this show. And even the same voice actors were used, with the obvious exception of Melanie Britt as She-Ra. As mentioned earlier, She-Ra was introduced in the 5-part series The Secret of the Sword, which was actually released as a full movie, which did very good numbers at the box office, grossing over $7 million on a $2 million budget. Now, even though He-Man had wrapped up his show, he still continued to appear in several episodes on She-Ra, giving it a feel of a shared universe. Which brings me to one of my more remembered episodes of She-Ra that I watched as a kid. The episode is called Horde Prime Takes a Holiday. Hordak has taken control of his master Horde Prime's warship, and he proceeds to attack She-Ra and the rebels. He also vows to take the ship to Eternia and then conquer that too, much to Skeletor's frustration, who then goes to Etheria to beat Hordak and take the warship for his own. He-Man then shows up and he gives She-Ra a hand. Now, this episode saw her transform her sword into various other weapons, from a helmet to a shield to a parachute. It was the first time I saw She-Ra ever do this, and I thought, now that is cool. He-Man never did that with his sword, even though it was identical. Was She-Ra's Sword of Protection more powerful? I mean, we never got the answer to that. Eventually, Skeletor is thwarted as his attempts to take the ship for himself fails, and he retreats back to Snake Mountain. Hordak has to run back to Horde Prime and tell him about the news about his ship, and naturally Horde Prime did not take it very well. She-Ra and He-Man usually had end-of-story morals in their episodes. This one in particular stood out as it was about being touched as a young person inappropriately, and the two heroes tell the viewers to talk to someone like a priest or a doctor or a rabbi. Now, for a kids show, and given the time period of the 1980s, this was a rather deep subject to get into. She-Ra did have more cooler aspects to her show. I already mentioned her sword changing into several different other weapons. There was the setting aspect, and unlike her brother who was based at Palace Eternia, Adora was based in the less glamorous Whispering Woods and led the rebellion against the Horde, whilst the planet of Etheria was also under the Horde's rule. Adora vows to help the rebellion once the Horde has been vanquished. As women tend to do, they fall for a guy with an edge to them. Adora met Seahawk, a pirate with a rugged and confident exterior. He ended up becoming Adora's on-again, off-again boyfriend. These features I feel gave Shira a little bit more character depth to her, which made her stories a little bit more interesting. Now personally, I always enjoyed the episodes that Heroine appeared in, and it made me want to have a proper full-on show with both of the twins in action. Now Shira and Adora took on the Horde with the aid of the rebellion, and Shira made many friends along the way, and here are some of the more notable characters. Swiftwind, Shira's talking steed who transforms into a winged unicorn. He's brave and an honorable being. Lighthope, the guardian of the Crystal Castle, who typically takes the form of a pillar of light. He's the wisest being on Etheria and is the one that Shira typically seeks for advice. Madame Raz, a witch who serves as an advisor to the rebels. She isn't quite the sorceress, and more often than not, she's more comic relief for the show and finds herself in a lot of comical situations. Broom, Madame Raz's companion and mode of transport. Cal, a flying creature who is a cross hybrid between a koala bear and an owl. Along with Lighthope, Madame Raz and Broom, he is aware of Adora's secret of being Shira. Bo, the rebellion's ace archer and one of the longest serving members of the rebellion. He is a cultured gentleman who exhibits insecurities. Bo has a crush on Shira but does not know her real identity of being Princess Adora. Princess Glimmer, Princess of Bright Moon, and was the leader of the Great Rebellion before passing the responsibilities to Adora. Despite being the former leader of the rebellion, she possesses light-based magical powers, making her more than just a standard warrior. Queen Angela, she is the winged queen of Bright Moon and Glimmer's mother, and one of the more powerful magic wielders on Etheria, along with Shadow Weaver and Caster Speller. She's renowned for her wisdom and her sense of justice. Caster Speller, another powerful sorceress who is the queen of Meister Core. Not your typical queen, as she loves parties and has a mischievous streak. Froster, a member of the Great Rebellion with vast cold-related powers. She's also the Ice Empress of the Castle Chill in the Kingdom of Snows. A blunt, direct, and opinionated individual who is not afraid to speak her mind. She has the hots for He-Man. He wasn't too reciprocal though. Seahawk, ending the section with Adora's boyfriend Seahawk, a renegade pirate who ends up helping the rebellion and falling for Adora. He appears only a handful of times but left his mark on the show as a renegade who became a hero. The Horde, led by Hordak, had its share of colourful characters. I won't go through each and every one of them, but here are a couple of the standout characters. Hordak, the evil tyrant who leads the Horde. Now, unlike his comic origins and his depiction in the 2002 He-Man series, this version of Hordak was a cyborg, capable of turning any or all parts of his anatomy into a host of weapons, including a shield, a laser cannon, and a rocket. Even though he's the evil leader, his depiction in this show was at times clumsy and goofy, which for me made him very inferior when compared to Skeletor. Shadow Weaver, the Horde's powerful sorceress whose face is hidden in the shadows of her hooded cloak, giving her that feel of a very intimidating character. You could say that she's Hordak's answer to Evil Lyn. She was once a friend of Caster Speller before she joined the Horde. It was her spell that enslaved Adora to working for the Horde before it was eventually broken, courtesy of the Sword of Protection given to her by the sorceress. Catra, the force captain of the evil Horde who can transform into a panther thanks to a powerful magic mask. She pretends to be loyal to Hordak but is generally untrustworthy, typically acting in her own self-interest. She has a back and forth rivalry with her teammate Scorpia, whom she despises. Once upon a time she almost left the Horde to lead an army of beings known as the Magic Cats, but was thwarted by Shira when she revealed her deception to the cats, that she was not the actual queen of their kind and her magic mask had been stolen by the Horde and given to Catra. Mantenna, an insectoid being whose bulging eyes can extend from their socket and fire energy beams. His portrayal in this show is cowardly and an inept character. He serves mainly as comic relief, and despite the odd occasion of brilliance, he really isn't depicted as a menacing member of the Horde. Leech, a master of the power suction. His cups capable of draining life force are firmly adhering to services. He has his moments of being a dangerous weapon for the Horde, but like a lot of the characters, he's somewhat comic relief. Grislaw is a beast-like being similar to Beastman minus the psychic ability to control other monsters. His depiction on the show is one of a bumbling oath, which completely negates his rather menacing look. Scorpia, a humanoid with a tail and claws of a scorpion. A long-standing rivalry she has with Catra, whom she absolutely despises, and much like Catra, she's untrustworthy and acting in her own self-interest. Horde Prime, the Lord and Master of the Horde Empire and Hordak's brother. There is an air of mystery to him as we never actually get to see his face and he's always concealed by smoke. For me, the Horde Prime and Hordak dynamic gives off vibes of Darth Vader and the Emperor from Star Wars, but on a more comical level. Now those were the main characters for the show, but what about the heart and soul of these characters? Now if you watch my videos you would know that my favourite aspect of animated shows is the voice acting. Now with the exception of the lead hero and the main antagonist, the voiceover cast is largely the same as it was in He-Man. Linda Gary, who voiced Teela, voices several of the female characters on She-Ra, including Glimmer, Shadow Weaver, Madame Raz, Scorpia, and gives different ranges for each character, which were mostly cartoony, girly, and comedic. With the exception of Shadow Weaver to the rule, a bit more menace to her. Erica Scheimer, she voiced other female figureheads on the show, including Queen Angela, Totarina, and Froster. In my opinion, not the best in terms of character ranges, and very one-dimensional. Lou Scheimer, the man behind the whole He-Man dynasty. Now, like on He-Man, he voiced several characters, including Cowl, Montana, Leech, the Horde Troopers, Horde Prime, Spirit, Swiftwind, Light Hope, Broom, Grizzler, Modulok, and Multibot, and Orko. Most of these are comedic characters. Diane Pershing, veteran voice actress who lent her vocal cords to Nitosa and Spinnerella. George DiCenzo, whilst playing several miscellaneous characters on the show, he was best known for his lead role as Hordak, followed by his next big role as Bo. His depiction of Hordak is more on the goofy side. He does have his menacing moments, but his portrayal of Hordak is very comical rather than intimidating. In contrast to Bo, whom he plays as a straight-faced good guy. Not a lot of depth and somewhat bland in my opinion. He also voices Seahawk and gives him a little more of an edge. Melindy Britt, the lead voice actress on the show, she does a great job of portraying She-Ra as this is a strong, powerful and compassionate hero. As Adora, a lot more vulnerable, but sweet, caring and a strong leader. Britt nails both women and does well to establish them as separate characters on the show, despite the fact that they're the same person. Britt voices other characters on the show like Castaspella and Mermista and other characters. Alan Oppenheimer as Skeletor and John Irwin as He-Man reprise their roles from the He-Man cartoon, and they appear a handful of times throughout the show's run. As this was the 80s, you don't get that voice actor star quality that you saw and heard in the 90s animated shows, so the portrayal for most of these characters are very cartoony and kid friendly, and I wouldn't say not a whole lot in the way of broad range of acting. Now She-Ra was a product of the 80s, and watching these episodes back in retrospect, they're mostly grounded in nostalgia. The show doesn't quite hold up as well as it was way too kid friendly, with plenty of morals that were spread throughout the show. It was very cartoony. There are other 80s shows like Transformers and Thundercats and Ghostbusters that I feel do a better job in terms of story and action, and those hold up way better. I do tend to get frustrated when I watch She-Ra or He-Man episodes because I want more in terms of action and drama. The show has a great setup in terms of the backstory and the characters, so it has the right ingredients for a compelling show. Unfortunately, this was a kids show aimed at kids with the intent of marketing and selling action figures, and given that it was the 80s, the action was always going to be kept at a minimum, so what you saw in the show was as good as it was going to get. Over the decades, He-Man has had several iterations, from the New Adventures to the Masters of the Universe Revelation and Revolution Netflix shows. But for me, the 2002 version for me is how you take a show from the 80s and give it a modern day coat of paint. The main characters are all intact, there were better and edgier storylines and action, and much better voice acting. It was just an all-round better update on the 80s show. I wish they had done a version of this with She-Ra, and given what we saw of Horde in the 2002 He-Man iteration, I think the show would have been excellent. Now, there had been conflicting reports of She-Ra possibly appearing in Season 3 of the 2002 Masters of the Universe. Given Horde and the Horde's appearances, it would have made a lot of sense. However, this was debunked by the showrunners Mike Productions. Mattel and Mike Productions were both pretty clear that they did not intend to use She-Ra. Eventually, Mattel responded to fan interest at San Diego Comic-Con, and there was exclusive artwork of She-Ra, which was drawn in the 2002 series style. On one hand, one of the showrunners had indicated that there were plans to bring She-Ra into Season 3 of Masters of the Universe 2002. On the other hand, the other showrunners said that there were no such plans, so it's hard to know what was real and what was fiction. But regardless, Masters of the Universe 2002 was cancelled after 2 seasons, so it's something that we're never going to really truly know. On top of all this uncertainty of She-Ra appearing in the 2002 show, She-Ra also has a very complicated licensing history. Pay attention. Mattel owns the character of She-Ra, however they apparently cannot make a television series with the character, and it goes back to She-Ra's initial conception. While the contract terms are not in public circulation, when it was time to work out terms between Filmation and Mattel for a new She-Ra series back in 1984-85, it seemed that Filmation had negotiated and obtained the exclusive rights to make She-Ra television shows permanent. Now, the exclusive She-Ra rights to make She-Ra programming appears to have stayed with Filmation, which was subsequently brought out by DreamWorks, which is now owned by NBC Universal. So basically, even though Mattel owns the rights to the She-Ra character toys, DreamWorks Animation, not Mattel Television, has the rights to make She-Ra television shows. Kevin Smith confirmed this last November 2021 while speaking to Den of Geek. Now, whilst Kevin indicated the people at Mattel and Netflix would love to have a She-Ra crossover happen, it's not something that can easily be worked out. He said, "The only thing I've been told over and over again is the properties are owned by 2 different companies. Masters of the Universe is owned by Mattel, the She-Ra figures are owned by Mattel, but animated She-Ra is owned by DreamWorks." With all this complicated malarkey, the Netflix animated He-Man shows were unable to use the She-Ra character. Now, there was a brand new animated She-Ra show which was named She-Ra and the Princesses of Power. This show was set on the planet of Theria and follows the stories of Adora and Catra, who were orphans and were raised to be soldiers in the Horde. Adora defects and joins the rebellion, while Catra stays with the Horde and became Horde's second in command. The show's premise centered around Adora and Catra's relationship of best friends turned enemies. It was very LGBTQ represented, with members of that community singing its praises and giving several daytime Emmy and Glad Media awards. I did try to watch this show, but it really and truly was not to my liking. I was not a fan of the artwork animation style, and there was no connection to He-Man in this iteration. The show had an audience, and I was not part of that audience. It just wasn't my cup of tea. On September the 13th, 2021, Amazon announced that a live-action She-Ra series is in development, with DreamWorks Animation serving as an executive producer, as the series will be a new, standalone story and it will not be connected to the animated show. It was announced that Nicole Kassell will direct the series, so we'll see how this unfolds. To bring this video to a close, She-Ra was very much a part of that great 80s period of animated cartoons. Was seen as the female equivalent of He-Man, but over time she proved to be more of a hero in her own individual right. The show, as I have said earlier, was aimed at kids and is very nostalgia driven for those who grew up in that era and who like to check it out every now and again. I did say earlier, the show does not hold up very well, but it still has enough of that nostalgia magic to rewatch and just enjoy the series for what it was, a product of its time. She-Ra has definitely left her mark on pop culture and is an inspiration to many young girls who wanted to be superheroes of their own. She can be put in that class of female icons like Wonder Woman or Supergirl or Sarah Connor, Xenomorph Princess and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The history is there for DreamWorks to create a new animated show in the vein from this very outing of She-Ra, but who knows if that will ever happen. We have the upcoming live action show series to look forward to, so we'll see how that all pans out. An iconic female hero, one of the most fondly remembered of all time, She-Ra Princess of Power.